We begin tonight with the U.S. and Israel's ongoing war with Iran, now entering its third week, and at this moment showing no end in sight. As of today, the death toll stands at more than 2,000, including at least 13 U.S. service members and hundreds of children across the region. This morning, U.S. Central Command confirmed they also struck more than 90 Iranian military targets on the island of Kharg. Officials, however, say the strikes did preserve Iran's oil infrastructure there. This comes after President Trump said the U.S., quote, totally obliterated every military target in Kharg Island, Iran's critical hub for oil exports. I spoke with the Iranian foreign minister earlier today in an exclusive interview that we're going to air in its entirety later on in the show. I did ask him, though, what Iran's response would be to these strikes on this island. Take a listen to what he said.
I think our armed forces have already answered that they would retaliate if our oil and energy infrastructure are attacked. And they will attack any energy infrastructure in the region which belongs to an American company or an American company is a shareholder. So the reaction would be clear.
This escalation comes as President Trump continues to claim victory over Iran. He posted again today on Truth Social. The United States of America has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically, and in every other way. However, despite his claims, he can't seem to get his story straight about when this war will end, if ever. Watch.
I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion.
You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
How long now do you think the war is likely to last?
I can't tell you that. I mean, I have my own idea, but what good does it do? It'll be as long as it's necessary.
We have virtually unlimited ammunition, and we're using it. We're using it. We can go forever. We could do things that would be so bad they could literally never rebuild as a nation again. And we're trying to be nice about it.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
I will feel it in my bones. So a lot of, just in that SOT match there were so many things that we can fact check. The president saying it's over in the first hour, and it's not. And I want to emphasize that just for a moment, because the president and the Israelis clearly thought that killing the supreme leader of Iran and the country's top generals, the heads of the IRGC and their commanders, would somehow decapitate the regime and cause it to wobble and perhaps potentially collapse. And I just want to play for our viewers some of the images that we got yesterday. This is the Iranian president walking in the streets of Tehran alongside Ali Larijani, who's the head of the National Security Council, as well as the head of the judiciary. They're all walked in a celebration there, what's called Al-Quds Day, Jerusalem Day. And this is not a regime that is wobbling. I mean, just the fact that they feel the confidence of being able to walk openly in the street is not a regime that is wobbling. So the president coming out and saying that it was over in the first hour, then saying it'll be over when I feel it in my bones, that it's like we've done so much to them. I think at some point, people are going to wake up and start questioning whether or not there's any truth to what the president says. And he doesn't even know the difference between an incursion and an excursion.
Yes. It sounds like we're all gallivanting on vacation rather than bombing a country.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that he keeps on declaring that we've won, that this is over. You read one of those remarks or one of those Truth Social posts earlier where he said that the United States of America has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically, and in every other way. He's also said that process should soon be starting, and that not only the death of Khamenei, but the country has been in only one day very much destroyed and even obliterated. He's also said we don't need people that join wars after we've already won. So he keeps on declaring that we've won. Meanwhile, earlier today, he posted on Truth Social basically announcing that we need the help of other countries in the Strait of Hormuz. It's almost like maybe he should not have started these needless trade wars and then launched a literal hot war in which we would need the help of our allies with whom we are trade warring. we need their help, right? And it would have been useful if we had done any planning here, first of all, but also any planning with any of our allies.
On the planning point, I think the piece that alarms me the most is not so much the communication from President Trump. Very used to frenetic communication from the president, confusing messages, so I'm not as surprised by that. I think one of the things that has most alarmed me in recent days is just the reporting that has come out that has suggested that he and the people around him seem to not have been able to anticipate some of the most basic things that experts, whether that is experts in the region, Iranians themselves who are in the diaspora have been warning on television could be a possibility, as well as economic experts, people that I know you've spoken to, Catherine, who said the first and obvious thing that the Iranians are going to do is shut down the Strait of Hormuz and use their sort of asymmetric ability to inflict economic pain on the United States to try to force Trump into a very terrible position. That's exactly what we're seeing here. And yet the reporting is telling us that Trump himself didn't see that coming. The other piece of this that I've found really disturbing in the messaging around the war recently, and Eamon, I really want your thoughts on this in particular, is some of the language and the description of their opponent, sort of the way they seem to create this image of the Iranians and all of their sort of proxies or allies, the sort of imagery that they conjure up. And I think that it takes a certain amount of arrogance, and I'm also going to say it, a bit of racism, to constantly talk about people like they are savages. That is a word that we have heard Hegseth use. Talk about people as though they are subhuman, too stupid to engage in a war with the United States, incapable of possibly outmaneuvering us, and then find ourselves in the exact position in which it appears they are consistently outmaneuvering us. I want our audience to take a listen to two things. The first is you're going to hear the way in which Hegseth, the defense secretary, has spoken about the Iranians. And then in the second bite, you're going to hear the president talk about the genetics of two suspects who engaged in terrorist attacks here in the U.S., in Virginia and Michigan. But listen to the racialized undertones of this.
For 47 years, these barbaric savages in the Iranian regime have murdered our brothers in arms. My guys, your guys, our guys.
The genetics are not exactly, they're not exactly your genetic. It's one of those problems, Brian.
Even Kilmeade there looks uncomfortable with that sort of casual eugenic talk there. And to be very clear, the suspects accused in these attacks deserve condemnation, to be brought to justice. But the problem with the aftershocks and effects of this war and rising violence and terrorism domestically here has nothing to do with people's ethnicity, their genetics, how they pray, and what communities they come from. And certainly, I would like to see this administration also reflect on their role in the risks here domestically, since they keep firing people from the FBI who would be experts in helping us stave off some of those attacks. But there's just this consistent language right now coming out from this administration that I think is not only just like morally abhorrent, but actually seems to be a part of the misfiring, misunderstanding, and lack of strategy around handling this war, because they seem to talk about our opponents who come from a civilization far older than the United States itself, as though they have no idea how to make a next move.
I think both of those points that you just made, both your point, Antonia, as well as Catherine's, they sort of come together to really paint a picture of an administration that is disconnected. Like, Catherine, you were talking about the fact that on a certain level, the messaging sounds like they're enjoying a vacation while everyone else is at war. And Antonia, you're talking about this notion of a ragtag bunch of soldiers fighting a war with sticks and stones, if you were to listen to Pete Hegseth. But the interesting thing that I found about this is that that's the language that's coming out of the White House and out of the Department of War. That is not the language that is coming from the people who are actually making the decisions around sending our missiles and how to engage the country on a real level. Like, let's take a look at what General Dan Kane had to say about the Iranian soldiers, because I felt like this really told a very interesting story.
Are they more formidable than you anticipated, General?
I mean, I think they're fighting, and I respect that.
The idea that he has already said that he respects that is 10 times as much as we've gotten from either Hegseth or President Trump. And I think that it's not necessarily about championing our enemies necessarily, but it's understanding that there is a gravity, there's a seriousness with which we should be approaching this conversation that has completely eluded the administration at the highest of levels. And I think that degree of unseriousness contributes to the disconnection, Catherine, that you were talking about, where it seems like we're in one reality watching this unfold, asking where are we going, what are we supposed to be doing, when is it going to be over? And Hegseth and the president seem to be playing Call of Duty.
Well, yeah, it's like, even if you regard the Iranian people as your enemy, which I don't think we should, the leadership has been quite bad, at least know your enemy, right? Yeah. Know your enemy, sure. and we can't even manage that much.
And also know your friends. And part of the reason, this is so frustrating, to your point, and I've spent the better part of this week talking to officials in the Gulf, these are our allies. These are countries we trade with. This is the lifeline to the global energy market. This is also a growing financial hub for, crossroads of East and West and North and South. And they feel totally abandoned in this moment. Why? Because the U.S. never gave them a heads up that we're about to embark on a war that is going to draw you into this war directly, where we have millions of people living, and they are now fending for themselves without any heads up that this could have possibly been a scenario that they should be prepared for. We didn't even give them the 0 hour as to when the attack was going to happen. Put aside operational security, the least you could do is tell your fellow allies, get your hospitals ready, make sure everybody's ready to go. We don't know if this is going to happen, but we need you to be prepared. And they didn't even get that courtesy from this American president. And so I feel right now, in the conversations I've had with many leaders across the Gulf, is that the U.S. is not offering an end game, and they didn't even give them a pregame to how this may play out, and that's why we are where we are right now. So,
meanwhile, what we know from the Iranians is that they have been preparing for what, Ayman, 4 decades, more than 4 decades, for this possibility?
1979, they have been preparing for a potential direct confrontation with America, and Donald Trump, as Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs told us, was the only one stupid enough to do it.